Well, hello and welcome to I Love Gay today. And we are here today with Meg Ten Eyck from EveryQueer. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. It's a snow day today, right?
It is. It is. I wish we still got snow days off from school, but it's a snow day.
I'm in Pennsylvania, just on the edge of New Jersey, and yeah, we got about a foot, and so it was fun connecting with you in Brooklyn, where it's just starting to finally taper off.
Yeah, it's just ending now, but it's been a nice, pretty snowy morning, so it's been good.
But it was fun because the fact that you're in Brooklyn and in New York, I haven't seen you in a little bit, but when we were together at the New York Travel and Adventure Show, and that's just another one of those ways that you've just continually kept yourself out there and present over all these years at conferences and conventions and so forth. And I loved seeing you there.
No, thank you. Yeah, I feel like, the evolution over time of all the different things that I've been doing, and I feel like it always comes back to LGBT travel and trying to do different things, try different avenues within the industry and what the audience wants and all that, and keep kind of moving forward.
Yeah, but I know I'm trying to think the first time I believe I saw you, I remember it was kind of remember it was an IGLTA panel at one of the conferences there. And but there you were, you're on stage and you were talking kind of at the very beginning when we were talking about influencers before they even people before folks even know there was content creators and then there's millennials and you were trying to help the audience and the destinations and hotels just kind of understand a little bit about some of this new technology, new stuff that was coming along.
Yeah, well, I think that, media in general has changed tremendously over the last 20 years, but in particular over the last 10 years. With the kind of advent in the early days of bloggers and then YouTubers and now social media influencers of all stripes, as well as, people who fall kind of more on the traditional media side, but they own their own platforms or they own their own media companies, their own publications. Um, I think the world of media has just changed so much, and that sometimes the industry has a hard time keeping up with the technology that's behind it or the advent of new streams of media, even. So it's, been interesting to be along for the ride and see all the different variations coming along.
Yeah, especially back then, it seemed like it was very focused on travel influencers and putting their personality out there primarily on Instagram. You feel like it's
Mhm.
evolved over those, like even say 10
Oh,
years?
absolutely. I would say when I first got started, blogging, written content was really what a lot of people were doing. Instagram was brand new when I first got started, and was starting to gain some traction. But it's also, I feel like there's always been a little bit of fear or maybe kind of nervousness around the concept because there's really no like barrier to entry for media anymore. And that can be a really great thing and it can be a really horrible thing depending on kind of how you're looking at it. And on one side, it's really great because so many marginalized communities are giving the opportunity to have their culture and their type of content and their interests, at a much larger platform level, that when there was a lot of gatekeeping of traditional media just didn't happen. But at the same time, then you're also getting folks who aren't media literate, who aren't media informed, or people who are trying to manipulate with media and all of those kind of things. So it's really a double-edged sword, but I think media, whether you love it or hate it, is a tool that needs to be used to disseminate information, especially when you come from a community that isn't represented in a lot of mainstream media like we do.
Yeah. Well, I think also, especially you're on the board of IGLTA now, and but I always feel like in the travel world, IGLTA helped play a kind of a key role because they started bringing and inviting influencers in with journalists to be able to kind of mingle and mix and also get to know some of the destinations and for the destinations and hotels and so forth to get to know them, and that seemed to help a bit in terms of being able to kind of filter through and figure out who's real and who's not.
Right. Well, and the IGLDA has really done a great job of bringing folks from all different sides of the industry together and giving people an opportunity to meet and connect. But you're right. There, I think on the media front, we have more in common than we don't. And I think, there's always a little bit of like infighting, eye rolling within, any industry of, oh, another photo or do you really need to know how many thread count are in the sheets? What, depending on which side of the aisle you're falling on with those comments. But we're doing the same thing. We're telling stories, we're communicating to our community, we're encouraging a love of travel, all of those. So Yeah, I love what IGLTA has done and what they continue to do for everybody in the community, but particularly for media.
Yeah. Have you seen like some of the content that you've created, whether blog posts or video, any of that? Have you seen it ever used by some of your clients and so forth as some of their marketing material as well?
Oh, definitely. We have clients who buy stuff all the time,
Yeah.
who do, yes, we've done a ton of that. But it's always cool to be able to see things, whether it's in print or whether it's, we had one of the destinations, Oxnard, California, put our campaign on a billboard during their Pride celebration, and they
Yeah.
used some of our imagery in ads that they did for their campaign around the world. In 2019, World Pride did a lot of stuff with our imagery and all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's always every single time it feels fun and exciting and really neat, especially when, the people that you're working with really love what you do. I feel like that validation is the ultimate high in this kind of work.
I love hearing that. My business partner's husband is from Oxnard.
Really,
Yes, yes. It's a
very
small world.
random coincidence.
I know. But yeah, but beyond all that, I mean, like I said, I first saw you, you were on a panel at IGLTA, but you have spoken at so many conferences and so forth. And you do a lot when you're, in my opinion, when you're really out there kind of educating and bringing the message out to where some of the folks are at in even more mainstream conferences.
Yeah, definitely. I would at this point I probably do maybe like twice a month between like in-person conferences and webinars and stuff. Love it. Like I feel like my like pathway into this industry was a little bit different than a lot of other people. I was an activist before I got started in travel and worked for some of the largest LGBT youth nonprofits.
Yeah.
So my background is in policy. So when I came into travel, I had kind of a different perspective of travel through a more political, the active border crossing, those kind of things, that thought process and that mentality. And early on, I decided to use a lot of that in the writing that I was doing because people started asking questions that were very much, well, do you feel safe? Like, and especially in the early days when I was traveling solo by myself, mostly in Asia in the beginning. And yeah, I did feel safe. And, was a long stretch of time that I was traveling with a non-binary partner who was very visibly LGBTQ. So we learned a lot together and we grew a lot together in like our understanding of travel as both a fun, enlightening, wonderful educational thing, but then also as kind of this teachable moment where we're growing and expanding and our understanding of travel, but also of the industry. So in the early days, a lot of the panel discussions were a lot of stuff about, what is social media and why should you be using it and kind of those basics. And I think now everybody has kind of bought in that social media, whatever variation is around to stay. So now it's become a lot more around, well, how do we strategically build out a message? How do we include like intersectionality in our diversity, equity, and inclusion programming throughout these different brands that we're working with?
Yeah.
And it's been a really fun journey along the way.
Yeah. It's interesting when you say that. That's I've always told folks it mirrors a lot of when the internet was first coming along in the mid 90s. There was just that disconnect. A lot of folks thought it was going to be like a CB radio, it's going to be a phase and so forth. But it grew into its own where now we don't even think twice about it. And out of all the other changes that came along, I always feel it's social in all of its forms: Facebook, LinkedIn, TikToks. But all of that was kind of like that next big shift because it took the internet's connectivity and it got us all engaged with each other for better or for worse. And that's where I agree with you that it's just really evolved into this place that really has set kind of a future for unlimited potential in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so much more personal than
Yeah.
forms of media in the past, whether it's video or podcasting or, things where you can see your face or see your voice. You have much more of a connection with an audience than, reading something in the past or, looking through a magazine and seeing an article. And you kind of build these parasocial relationships online that really give people insight into who you are as a person. Now, often that's a one-way mirror, so pros and cons there. But people feel like it's having a conversation with a friend who's making a recommendation rather than somebody trying to sell them something, or, maybe there's some ulterior motives to whatever they're talking about and their content that's more or less advertorial. So I think the changes are going to happen. And I think the scare tactics are always going to happen. We're seeing that with AI, right? Like everybody's terrified that AI is going to be the end of every creative field. And I don't think that's going to happen. And just like social media was not the end of journalism, we're going to change, we're going to adapt, and the types and forms of content that we're putting out there are going to change. And hopefully we'll be able to, have a little bit of pie for everybody to go around.
Well, I think the most important piece is what brought us together here when I saw you in New York was that I'm excited because you're really taking this to that next level, which I think is a huge step. And you're creating the Queer Media Summit for next year in New York. But
Yeah.
I think everybody's kind of learned a little bit about everything that from what you're thinking. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what they can expect there.
Sure. So we're hosting Queer Media Summit in February of 2025, so a full calendar year. And we're working with Marriott Marquis in Times Square, which has been great. And New York City Tourism is going to be working with us as well. So it's really, I go to all of these different conferences, whether they be travel conferences or whether they're more mainstream events. Um, and I talk about LGBTQ issues and I talk about LGBT media in particular at a lot of these events.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized that there's not a space for LGBTQ media to come together and really just kind of exist within our own subset of the industry. Sure, there's, amazing influencer conferences like Playlist Live that are absolutely massive, but that doesn't really fit the bill. And there's incredible things that are, travel specific like IGLTA, but it's not just for media. And Queer Media Summit isn't travel specific. It's open to all different forms of media, whether they be content creators, influencers, traditional journalists, freelancers, the kind of gamut. And we're really excited to see something that is one part professional development and one part business and networking opportunities. Because really, the needs of different people, depending on what side of the media they fall on, are unique and different. If you're more of a traditional journalist, you may not need as much professional development in writing or storytelling, but maybe it's about building a personal brand so that you can get the attention of editors more. Or if you're a publisher or a content creator, you need to meet these brands in order to have sponsored content. So the first day we'll be doing amazing panel discussions, a keynote session, all of our speakers. And on the second day, it'll be a one-on-one media marketplace. So folks can have the opportunity to network, meet with different publicists and PRs and brand managers from all of these different great brands that we're going to be having there, and really be able to utilize that time efficiently and effectively and make the connections that make sense for them, whether it's, looking to be hosted on a press trip or having a brand campaign or really just getting ideas for stories on an editorial level. We're excited to be able to fill a lot of needs. And on the brand side, have a lot of LGBTQ people of different backgrounds and different creative styles so that they can really learn how to build out a brand campaign or messaging that is welcoming and affirming for our community. So I'm excited. It'll be great.
I'm excited. Yeah, that's and those sort of things are great, especially the first year, because everything you were describing, what you're going to find is that it'll be interesting to watch and see what resonates strongest and how, what people gravitate towards, because they sometimes have a life of their own after that as you continue in year 2 and year 3.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the wonderful parts of it is that this is really the result from, the need of the community seeing so many different events come together and like, the media is there, but maybe they're not as much of a focus or a priority, or, the media is there, but everybody's kind of sitting in a press conference and not really kind of interacting with the rest of the conference. So I'm sure that we'll grow and expand, and, if the gays love anything, it's feedback. So I'm sure I'll get notes.
Oh, I'm looking. This is going to be exciting. So, no, mostly I'm really glad that you were able to take a few moments of your time and kind of share a bit of your story here with our audience. But in addition, and especially looking forward to what all comes together for next year.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks. Take care.
And it feels good, so good, coming back again. That's